so much for joining me on Being Indispensable. My name's Liz Van Vliet. We're all dispensable. I know that better than anyone. I'm a breast cancer survivor. But that doesn't mean that we can't invest in ourselves to improve the skills and capabilities that are going to help us stand out and be perceived as indispensable. Being indispensable is also about the being side of the equation. Because if we're not looking after ourselves and our own well-being, then we have no hope of showing up as indispensable in the workplace. Well, hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to episode 151 of the Being Indispensable podcast. And this episode is very special. It is short, it is sweet, and it is to tell you that I am working on a new name for the podcast. 150 episodes of the Being Indispensable podcast. It felt like a good time for me to rebrand and rename. And I want to share with you in this episode why I feel that way and what you can expect from episode 152 going forward. For however long I remain in the podcast world, bringing podcasts to you, which I hope will continue. But anyway, that's an aside. That's thinking too far in the future, and I just need to focus on right here, right now. So as you will see from the title of this episode, going forward, you will hear this term, assist with impact. And I have some big plans for that phrase in terms of the way I am positioning myself as a trainer in the executive assistant, admin professional training space. And that term has come about because, as you know, I have for a long time been banging on about my competency framework and my competency model, and this idea of you elevating your impact by getting out of that order taker quadrant, that order taker zone. And any of you who have been listening to the podcast for a while or who have perhaps attended one of my training events that I do either through my own, efforts or through partnerships that I have with training organisations and other speaking events will know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about those four quadrants, that, it's not a judgment, it's just the reality that as assistants, you are required to show up differently. You may be required to show up as an order taker at any given time. But what my hope for you in terms of the training that I deliver, it's about helping you get out of that order taker zone and move into the more impactful zone. So let me just backtrack a little bit. For those of you that might be fairly new to the podcast and may not have gone back and listened to, way back in the, annals of history when I first started the podcast, how I came up with the name Being Indispensable. It was a combination of things, but the indispensable part, that word, actually came about as a result of a survey that I conducted on LinkedIn, so over 5 years ago now, where I asked assistants in a number of different forums, groups, what is one word that describes how you want to show up as an assistant? And I conducted a running tally of those responses, people submitting their replies, and indispensable at the time, with over 600 responses at the time, was the top word, the top descriptor, the top adjective. Now, I know better than anybody how problematic it is to be, to be thinking about yourself as indispensable. And I've talked about that again and again on the podcast. And I talk about it in the intro to the podcast, that we might want to be perceived as indispensable, but the reality is that at the end of the day, whether it's because of changes in our organisation, situational changes in our life, through health or economic issues, whatever it might be, we're all dispensable. But I have loved being able to talk to that dichotomy, that paradox between wanting to be seen as invaluable by our executive, by our manager, by our senior executive leader, if you're in the public sector, and wanting at the same time to, be able to advance your own career and develop your skills and competencies and perhaps transition into a different role, and that push and pull that exists when you're in that situation. So 150 episodes have been about being indispensable, about being human beings, not human doings, about this idea of progress over perfection. And, I am super proud that I've managed to deliver 150 episodes with that as sort of the driving, raison d'etre, whatever the expression is, for why this podcast exists. Going forward, however, just like this podcast has evolved in 150 episodes, well, so have I in terms of what I do and how I speak to the competencies and capabilities that I want you to be able to feel confident in so that you can assist with impact. And that is the phrase that has really resonated with me, and it's the one that I have started to really find I feel really confident and capable in my own ability to help you do that. And that is my mission and my vision for you, is that you can, as assistants, assist with impact. So why not, and now is as good a time as any when I've just hit 150 episodes to change it up. Change up the podcast name to Assist with Impact. And I hope that you will be as excited as I am about what is to come, that this podcast will continue to grow and build the audience there are so many more podcasts out there for assistants than there were when I started my humble little podcast, way back 5+ years ago. And I'm so thrilled about that. And I love the fact that you as assistants have this, growing podcast pool of podcasts out there that you can tap into in terms of your development and building your competencies and capabilities. And hearing from assistants as well is something that I love about the podcasts, the other podcasts that are out there. But I still feel that this is a space for me, one way that I can reach assistants to be able to help you assist with impact by developing those power skills, those soft skills on steroids, as well as helping you develop your big picture thinking and all of the other things that I talk about and have talked about in the podcast to date, as well as bringing you interviews with people that I think you are going to benefit from hearing and that's going to add value to you as you seek to assist with impact. So, very short, very sweet. You can expect that from 152 onwards, episode 152 onwards, the podcast will be rebranded with that title, Assist with Impact. And I would love to hear from you in however you want to reach out to me to tell me what you think of the new name for the podcast. But as I said, some things will not change, that being that I will continue to remind you that we are human beings, not human doings. I will continue to remind you that it's about progress over perfection in terms of trying out new ways of doing things in terms of your assisting with impact. And I will continue to be that person that is less rah-rah and more aha. And by that, I mean that I'm not all about the bright, shiny appearance on social media and claiming, making big claims. I'm a person that just wants to feel that in a small way, whatever small way that I can, I'm helping you be different, show up differently, and assist with impact in your role as an office professional, as an admin professional. Thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to bringing you episode 152 in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see the show notes, head over to my website. It would be great if you haven't already done so. If you enjoyed the show, if you could kindly go to iTunes and leave a review. It helps other people find the show. Thanks for listening and have a great week.